Thank you very much, Ken. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you today. Welcome to your annual meeting. As Ken said, Wendy and I, three teenage boys, and initially there was some excitement in the household about moving to Southern Ohio, Columbus area, and as you would suspect, with teenage boys, you know, those emotions kind of ebb and flow, but everybody is in Ohio, and we're enjoying things so far. And you'll have to apologize for us. We may have some accent and some words that we use up in Grand Rapids near Canada. So if I say "a" too many times, you'll have to just give me a reason to pause there. Everybody did make it, including the dog. Of all of the things that we had going on, to the amazement of Wendy and I, the dog was beside himself. We're not really sure. He definitely knew something was going on, and the day that the movers came to the house in Grand Rapids, he would not leave her side or my side all day. So very interesting how that all works out. As Ken mentioned, and I want to let you know that in my 25 years of working with and for electric cooperatives, this year marks the first opportunity that I've had to exercise the rights of being a member of a cooperative. And I voted this year in the trustee election. And so for me, the last 6 months, this is just a little bit of whipped cream on top of the ice cream. I'd like to talk to you today about three things. We're going to visit a little bit more about 2011. We want to talk to you a little bit about retail rates, and we'd like to just visit briefly about the storm that affected many of you beginning on June 29th. Regarding the operations for 2011, specifically the operating margins for 2011, as Jim said, we finished the year with a negative operating margin. Now our lenders and others, they're not too keen on the negative operating margin, but there were a couple of key factors that led to that. We had no growth, substantially due to the recession, but also due to weather. And then we had a rate structure issue that we needed to resolve. We weren't, with regard to the wholesale power portion of the electric bill, was not keeping up with the actual cost that we were paying. To address the loss, the cooperative was forced to increase the base rates in April of 2012. And then in addition, beginning last month, we made a change to that portion of your rate that reflects the cost of wholesale power and transmission. Together, those changes did result in a higher price for you of about $4 per month for a typical member. It's never easy raising rates, especially at this time when so many of our neighbors are struggling to make ends meet. But if we look back to 2001, and that's the chart that is on the right-hand side, we've had an increase of just a little over 2% on average each year, which of course, as many of you know, is over that period of time much lower than the rate of inflation. And I think just as important to that, and it's certainly worth mentioning, that when times were good, when times were better for the cooperative, the board lowered rates for 3 years beginning in 2005. About 65% of your electric bill represents the cost of wholesale power and transmission. And in recent years, you no doubt have seen that the cost of wholesale power has risen significantly. So I'd like to spend a minute or two just talking about the three primary areas that have been responsible for that. To comply with EPA mandated regulations, over $1.25 billion has been invested in environmental controls at the power plants. And the result of that investment is a dramatic reduction in the emissions that have been achieved, certainly at the Cardinal Station. And I want you to know that you can be very proud that Buckeye Power's coal-fired power plants, your power plants, will be some of the cleanest plants in the United States and perhaps the world. Another major driver for the rise in wholesale power has been the cost of fuel. Now, the primary source of fuel for our cooperative members, of course, is coal, but we also use natural gas, water, and wind, and methane to generate electricity that you use. And as you've no doubt seen in the news, and perhaps even this week with the campaigning that's happening in the state of Ohio, the government has instituted several new regulations that have, in part, resulted in a 79% increase in the cost of coal since 2004. Other factors such as the price of oil have also contributed to the run-up in fuel, and it now represents about 40% of the cost of wholesale power, or just about 30% of your electric bill. Lastly, before the recession, Buckeye Power, along with South Central Power, was growing at a very fast pace, and that required investments in new generation resources. At that time, Buckeye determined that purchasing used natural gas and coal-fired power plants would bring the best value for the customer. And we now have generation capacity to serve our customers for the next 10 to 15 years. In my view, the bottom line is this. You own a cost-based utility system with some of the cleanest coal-fired power plants in the United States. And as you can see on the chart to my right, you pay retail rates that are among the lowest in the state. South Central Power, in partnership with Buckeye Power, is in a great position to be a low-cost provider for many years to come. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be future rate increases, but I assure you that the board and management will be very diligent about keeping any increases to infrequent and as low as we possibly can. I'd like to just shift gears and talk a little bit about the storm that came through the area on June 29th. That storm, of course, as most of you know, packed quite a punch. And over the years, over the many years, over the history of the cooperative, we've dealt with ice storms and hurricanes and other windstorms, but I'm told by our employees that this is one of the worst that we've gone through. And at one point, we had over 67,000 of our customers that were without power on that Saturday morning. We reconnected the last consumer about 8 days later, the following Saturday. And I just want to share with you a couple of statistics. I know that there's some information out in front that's got some of this data, but I think our reaction, our actions that took place really, I think, were to the benefit of the member. We had 60 line crews working on the system during those 8 days. 35 of those crews were South Central Power employees. We had 22 construction contractor crews, and we had 3 crews that came from neighboring cooperatives to help us out toward the end of that first week. We also had 40 crews from the tree contractor that we employ. And so we had considerable number of linemen and other workers on the system, most of them working 8 straight days without a serious injury. And I think that in and of itself is quite an accomplishment. Of course, in addition to the field crews, we had many of our other employees who were supported the restoration efforts by working on technology and communications, logistics, certainly assessment, and of course vehicle maintenance. During that 8-day stretch, we used over 10,000 gallons of fuel, and these trucks, these field crews drove over 80,000 miles. 80,000 miles we drove in, collectively over those 8 days. Some of you that I were talking to this morning inquired about the cost of the storm. Our estimate today is that storm cost $2.5 million. And we're working today with the state and federal authorities to determine whether any reimbursement, public assistance will be available for up to 75% of that cost. And if we're unable to secure federal assistance, then the board will review how the cost of the storm will impact the cooperative's financial position, and from there they will determine whether or not the cost should be recovered through a surcharge on your bills or some other method. As Ken mentioned, and I'd like to take a moment to mention, we know that outage restoration in a time like that can be very frustrating for some customers. But Carrie, who is our executive assistant, has been telling me for the past month that we have received more thank you notes from members than we've ever received in the past. And I just want to extend my appreciation for your patience as we had most of our linemen, all of the crews were working 16-hour days and certainly near 100-degree heat in most of those days. So thank you very much. Also, in the coming months, we have a, oh yes, it would be, yes, thank you. A round of applause certainly is appropriate. Thank you very much. In the coming months, and I think you can appreciate this, we'll put a team together and we'll review our response to the storm, and we'll try to identify those ways that we can just do a little bit better next time. I'd like to close my report today by reflecting on what I've learned about South Central Power during my first 6 months. Your cooperative was built on a foundation that watches out for the customer, keeps an eye on the short term, but focuses on the long term. And over the past 75 years, this foundation has been strengthened by the principles of member control. We have 11 well-informed, active trustees elected by you, the membership, that set the direction for the cooperative by balancing the needs of the company with the needs of the with the customer. As Jim mentioned, member equity. Over $94 million has been in member equity has been returned to the patrons in the past 76 years, including $7.3 million in 2012. Employees, we have 233 conscientious and engaged employees who care about their service to you, the member patron. And we've got a very solid system of distribution, substation, transmission, and generation assets that we can be proud to own and operate. Finally, Mr. Chairman, the foundation of the cooperative is strengthened by a very simple mission: deliver safe, reliable, and affordable electricity. And so long as we keep that mission front and center while we build on this foundation, we know we'll continue to do right by you, the member owner. Thank you again for coming today. Good to see you.